Hello and welcome to Sisterhood of the Traveling Paperbacks, a cheerful and irreverent book club podcast all about genre fiction, fandom, and the things that make us happy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 7 of Sisterhood of the Traveling Paperbacks. As always, today we're going to talk about what we're currently reading. Then we're going to talk about our book of the fortnight, A Trifle Dead by Livia Day, before moving on to our next book and what we have ongoing in the future. My name is Chelsea.
I'm Claire.
And I'm Kay.
And to start off with what we are currently reading, I just finished up 2 things, one of which I really enjoyed and one of which I did not. The one that I really enjoyed was Hillbilly Elegy, the audiobook. The subtitle is Memoir of a Family and Culture in Crisis by J.D. Vance, and this essentially looks at the culture of poor whites, mainly in places like rural Appalachia and along the Rust Belt, and how some of the kind of social and cultural and family institutions align with and clash with government regulations and government institutions to lead to just a really kind of poor culture and a cultural poverty along with a fiscal poverty that is really interesting. My mother's family largely hails from Ohio, and from the Ohio and Virginia area. So there was a lot of stuff in there that I really recognized. I've read narratives similar to this, but always usually from racial backgrounds that are not white. So I just thought that it was really interesting. And then the book that I really did not like was The Trials of Apollo, the first book, The Hidden Oracle, by Rick Riordan. And so here's my thing. I have like one quibble with this book, but it is a huge fucking quibble. And it is that throughout the entire book, and the whole story is the story of Apollo pining for his one true love, Daphne, who turned herself into a tree for some reason. And hi, that's not how that fucking myth went down. And so I understand it's a middle grade book, but there's a lot of stuff behind the Apollo and Daphne myth that gets into like consent and rape and sexuality.
Did she not turn into a tree to escape from him?
No, exactly. That's the thing. Like in the book, it's glossed over as Apollo just really wants to date her, but like it's a just a bad set of circumstances because he pisses off Cupid, and Cupid hits Daphne with this arrow, and she doesn't love him, and she turns into a tree, and he doesn't know why, and he just really misses her, and Daphne's his one true love, and it's just like, but that's a very not okay way of putting that
It's not a particularly
myth across.
mindful way of adapting that, no.
And especially for a middle grade audience, and I understand that discussing rape with a middle grade audience is not something that you're going to necessarily do as an author, nor do I think it's something you should do. But at the same time, maybe then don't go into the Apollo and Daphne myth. Like maybe just don't go there, because this is one of those Disney-ification moments where if and when the kids ever learn the truth of this myth, like that's gonna be a real gut punch to a lot of these kids. And there's just a lot of
Disney-ification's kind of literal here, right? Because aren't those published by Disney Hyperion?
Yes, they are. Yes, exactly. And it's literally that. It's like it's the instead of the racial oppression, it's the sexual oppression version of Pocahontas and John Smith and how all of that played out in the Disney movie.
But
so
you know that like somewhere Daphne is like high-fiving Cupid and they're having like drinks together and she's like, thanks for telling Apollo that you cursed me, right? So that I could escape him. Cheers, you got my back, friend.
Well, and it's just like, I guess my problem with the narrative is it flips this story that's really about how awful Apollo is to not just leave Daphne the fuck alone so she doesn't have to turn into a tree. And it turns it into basically a fridging of Daphne as a tree and how now we need to feel bad for Apollo because
Chelsea,
he's really sad.
He's such a nice guy.
No! I can't. I'm like, don't get me wrong.
I wish everyone could see the pained expression.
Just like, I can't even like look at my webcam and look these ladies in the face right now. Like, don't get me wrong. Because like Apollo is I like this book because it introduces Apollo as a bisexual narrator, and it very on the page names and addresses his bisexuality and the fact that he was in love with both Daphne and Hyacinthus. And I get that, and that's cool. Yeah, for that. But like, we can yay for that while also being like, why the fuck do we have to turn Daphne's story of basically almost being raped by Apollo into a fridging narrative into which we now have to feel bad for him? I feel cleansed, you guys. I feel like I got that out, and I'm feeling better about my life. But, so that was what I've been currently reading. Somebody else talk. Claire, you talk.
So, let's talk about tapeworms. Because I'm reading...
Oh my god!
Are you reading those?
I'm reading Parasite by Mira Grant.
Oh god, yay!
Is this your first time reading those?
Yes it is. I have the physical copy of Parasite, and I started it a while back and then put it down for no particular reason at all. I'm just terrible at finishing books that I start. And then I treated myself recently with the audiobook because I was just like, fast-paced one, a book, whatever.
Yeah.
I was telling a friend of mine about my Shauna Maguire tattoo that I want to maybe have at some point, and I was describing to her how badass Shannon is by talking to her about like her CDC adventures when researching the Feed series, which is great. Shauna Maguire gives great interviews, and so if you've never heard her speak, you should definitely listen to some of her like book tour appearances and interviews and panels and stuff. But when I listened to some of those to like show my friend, I was like suddenly remembering that I never actually finished those books, and so I immediately needed to restart the series. And so this is this parasitology. The first book is Parasite, and it's in a future where the hygiene hypothesis that says that we're basically too clean and we don't interact with our world enough now, so our immune systems are going into overdrive and hurting us instead. So that hypothesis, that's a medical hypothesis that exists right now, in that universe has been proven true. And one company decided that obviously the best way to combat that was to give everybody medicalized tapeworms that are, modified to be safe for the human body. And you take them in a pill form, and they're fine and safe and everything. Except, of course, because it is a Shauna Maguire book, even though it's under a Mira Grant name, that ends up triggering some kind of weird apocalypse where the tapeworms take over the brains of their hosts and start, just sleepwalking. You have a company that developed this for profit. They're obviously hiding something, or a lot of things, and it's just great. I'm enjoying it a lot at the moment.
Yeah, Shannon Mira writes such good medical stuff. She writes such good medical science background to the worlds that she creates that it's just really...
Can I say a thing about this series real quick? Non-spoilery.
Yeah, of course.
I am 99% sure I'm remembering this correctly. It was originally a 2-book contract.
Uh-huh.
Yes,
that extended to 3.
Yeah, very cool.
And it reads like it.
Oh.
It reads like it. And that's has never been a problem for me with Shannon before. But it really felt like there was not enough material for 3 books. So I think that the second and third books drag.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate,
that's unfortunate.
Because the world building's really cool, and obviously the prose is gorgeous. But yeah, just a warning.
I mean, I've already bought the audiobooks for the second and third book, because I definitely click buy 3 credits at once, and I'm like, meh. It'll be good for the gym.
That's always a good response. What are you reading, Kay?
All the things. I'm reading all the things.
Always.
Let's see. I read more Austen since last time we spoke. I finished Persuasion again on audio. Again, read by Juliet Stevenson because she's a boss. I also accidentally... this is a thing that happens in my life. I will accidentally read things, apparently. I accidentally reread Deathly Hallows because I was on a road trip with my brother-in-law and my sister, and my brother-in-law was listening to the audio in the car.
Oh, fair.
So, that was a thing that happened.
It's a good book. And, nothing wrong with Harry Potter on audio.
watching his face while he was driving and listening to it was amazing. He's like the most Gryffindor person I know. So like just picture our relationship. I am this tiny evil Slytherin and he is this giant like bleeding heart Gryffindor, and we're both listening to that book. So just like enjoy that mental image.
That's a hard book to listen to while you drive. That'd be a hard book to listen to and drive.
It's a hard book to listen to while you drive. Final Girls by Mira Grant, which I really should have looked up the release date on that. I read my arc and it was great, and I can say almost nothing without being super spoilery, so just it was real great. And then The Simplicity of Cider by, I'm so sorry, I should have looked up how to say her last name, Amy E. I think it's Reichert, but I'm probably wrong.
Okay.
Reichert. It is her third book, and I think I would say that the first one, The Coincidence of Coconut Cake, was romance. I think these second two were probably more women's fiction, just based on like heat level. Okay. But I mean, it has a lovely romance. And it's about this girl who lives on, they're like 5th generation orchard owners in Wisconsin, and she and her dad are the only ones still running the orchard, and she is a cider maker, and a gentleman and his young son come to help them out for the summer, and there's just a lot of feelings and lovely romance, and there's a reappearance of the couple from the first book in like the final act in a really fortuitous fashion, and I love when authors do that. And it was just really sweet. It was just fluffy and wonderful, you know?
Oh, that's cute. And sometimes that's just all you need from a book. So,
yeah.
Speaking of, all right, is that about it?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that all you're reading?
I've been reading a lot of fan fiction. I'm trying to think if there was anything I actually needed to like wreck.
Yeah. Anything of particular note?
I mean, yes, probably. I don't even remember what prompted me to read this because it's been forever since I've watched White Collar or even been interested in reading White Collar. Someone must have wrecked it somewhere. But it's Copper Badge, who I just blanket recommend as a writer. He is wonderful.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah.
I don't think I've ever read a bad Copper Badge story, which is insane because he's put like 4 million words of fan fiction on the internet.
Yeah.
This one's called Jeffrey Nulier's Man with Fedora.
Huh.
And I would call it case fic. Probably.
Okay.
It's about 20,000 words, and it's just a wonderful little Neil character piece, basically, and it's just great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally looking up what White Collar is because I've never heard of it.
I was just saying, I have no basis or knowledge in the White Collar fandom. That is never a show that I like hopped on.
I think I only watched like the first season, and then after that I was like, that's all I needed from this. But I think the White Collar pilot is possibly the best cable TV pilot I've ever seen.
Really?
It's brilliantly done. Yeah, it's so good.
Wow.
And I think the cast on that show is excellent. Mm-hmm. It's why we have Matt Bomer in our lives. That's what White Collar is.
That's always a blessing.
So.
Always to be remembered as a blessing.
Other than that whole playing a trans person when you are not a trans person thing. I'm really down on that.
I mean, you know. But who hasn't done that?
I just kind of expect
whatever.
White gay men to let down the rest of the LGBT community, and maybe that is unfair of me, but it's just kind of historically held out as a thing that happens, so...
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. All right. Well, I guess in that case, we will go ahead and switch gears a little bit to talk about our book of the podcast. We are talking this time about A Trifle Dead by Livia Day. Livia Day is a pseudonym for Tansy Rainier Roberts, who we also love. And we really, really enjoyed this one. This is a cozy mystery. Is that right? I don't know. I don't know anything about mysteries. It says on Goodreads that it's a cozy mystery.
So mystery classifications are slightly different in Australia. So like this one doesn't follow neatly into any of the categories
that's fair.
in American mystery. It's like borderline cozy.
Mm-hmm. And
I
it
just like mainstream mystery.
That's fair. And it's about Tabitha Darling, who owns a coffee shop / cafe. She is a pastry chef. And one day she is kind of hanging out at home, and her upstairs apartment neighbors are a band, and they find a dead body in some kind of weird rope trap in the closet of their apartment. This, of course, brings local police and local media personalities around, all of whom interact with Tabitha. Tabitha has lived her whole life in Hobart. Her dad was the police chief, and basically she knows everybody. So it is just, as most mysteries are, the story of how she becomes kind of more and more involved with the case. We get the big reveal and then a very nice little wrap up. There's lots of really great stuff in this book. Like I said, it is set in Hobart. So it is definitely an Australian book, and it reads as one to somebody who doesn't read a lot of books set in Australia, which I thought was really, really nice.
Way. Yeah.
It also has, it's incredibly funny. Tabitha, I thought, was a badass narrator. I just absolutely loved hanging out with her for like the entire time of this book. And it's about coffee, and there's just so much going on here. So what did you guys think? You will be so fucking
hungry when you read this.
Yes.
You will be so hungry.
Like,
just a warning.
Like 75% of my bookmarks are about food.
And there's recipes included.
Yeah, I actually wrote those because I have a library digital like loan, so it's going to go away eventually. So I actually wrote those recipes down for when they take my book away. Yeah, like if you are in any way interested in like baked goods or sweets, or especially if you're a coffee person, like 75% of my bookmarks in this book are just like, that sounds delicious. Like, I want one of those. Sounds so good. Yeah, I thought this book was cute. I liked this book. I did not love this book.
I want to like know what you didn't like first off. Just like,
okay, well, my first thing, and this is just a quibble that I have, and that's just that I don't like reading dialect.
Oh yeah, that annoyed me.
Was it the Scottish annoying?
Yeah, it's the Scottish thing. Like, and granted, this is just me as a reader, but like, I can be told that a character is Scottish and then read his lines as such going forward in my mind. It visually bugs me and kind of takes me out of the story to see the dialect spelled out and written out. But
so that is actually a regional publishing thing.
Is it? Okay.
We tend to not get that in ours.
Okay.
A bunch of Australian stuff I've read, they write out the dialect like that.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
and like
really...
I said, that's interesting.
That might be a false assumption on my part, but like multiple Aussie things I've read have had things like that.
Yeah.
Well, and it could just be a lack of, because it's not something that really ever happens when I'm reading American fiction. Like they will have characters of dialect, but they won't actually write it out. Like, unless it's for very specific, like, stylistic purposes, usually.
Like, historically, we had that in American publishing, but now it feels kind of
but we just haven't, It feels,
there are plenty of word choices, you know, there's plenty of ways to indicate that someone's Scottish without even just mentioning repeatedly that they're Scottish, which still happens because other people refer to him as, like, the Scotsman or whatever. Kind of
swoony accent.
But, you know, and you know, she can refer to his swoony accent because, you know, I personally think Scottish accents are kind of swoony as well. But
I have no problem with that part.
To have it, it feels weird, especially like for me to have it written out, because like it's a relatively everyday thing, you know, for me. And so like the fact that the Australian accent, the Australian like dialect and the way that they talk, which sounds very Australian and is like for me very, very weird. That's not what I hear every day. That's written out normally, but then you've got, you know, the Scottish accent being spelled out as more than just like, here's a word choice that he, you know, I don't know. It was a bit jarring at first, but I kind of managed to ignore it after a little while because I thought like once you
I mean, and it didn't bother me enough that like I stopped reading, and that's like a very line edit specific thing. I think for me the reason, like for me it was just a very like, it was a fine book. It was just a very like kind of 3-star book, and I think it's just because something about either the characterization or the pacing felt off at times for me, and I felt like this was, as opposed to the first book in a series, a second or third book in a series, and I just felt there were times where I felt like the relationships or some plot points kind of hinged on there being some kind of like emotional weight and kind of investment that hadn't necessarily been built yet. And I don't know if that's just because if it was a pacing thing or something in the characters. Not a ton. That's what I was going to say second, is I don't know if it's in the writing itself or it's just that it's a function of mystery genres that I'm not familiar with, because I read like true crime mysteries. Like I don't read like cozy mysteries and like mystery fiction, like hardly ever. So it could just very much so be a lack of familiarity with some of like the tones and like ways things function in mystery.
On the part of like the work and not on your reading of it. But like
I understand
more of a genre convention there.
But I can definitely cop to like that being something that would not necessarily bother you if like Kay, you are more familiar with like how mysteries function as like a genre and as a bigger piece of work.
I definitely thought it read a little bit weird, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what it was right now. And if I think there are a lot of times in this book where I was reading it and I kind of, you know, they mentioned something and I was like, oh, is that a thing? Okay, then. Kind of, at some point we find out that her dad died. Like, I mean, just another character who hasn't lived in Hobart his whole life says, oh, your dad passed away, didn't he, or something. And then she confirms, and clearly everybody else knew it before, and there's just not really been like a lot of reference to it, even though she's thought about her dad a lot. And it's like, yes, she's in denial, that makes sense. But like, I wasn't sure whether it was intended to be jarring, or whether it was just me missing things as a reader, which like I do reasonably often.
I thought that was super telegraphed with the police guys showing up at her cafe and hanging out all the time trying to make sure she was okay. Like, to me, that was clearly something going on with that and not just they're coming by to check up on her.
Oh, no. See, that didn't register for me. Maybe I'm just a bad person. Maybe it was the way she always, because he never actually was there in first person, I always assumed that he'd passed away. And I understand, like, textually, she only ever says that he has moved to Queensland. Like, and we don't actually find out that he's actually dead until much later on in the book. But, like, because the way she talks about him is mostly in memory and in the past tense, and because he never appears as his own represented character in the book, I just kind of always assumed he was dead.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just a bad person. And so maybe because I'd already assumed that particular scene didn't feel like a reveal, really. I was just like, oh, were we not all like, I thought it was a bigger reveal when we found out that what's his name? Not Butler. What's his name?
Bishop?
The cop, Bishop and Xantheep are related. Like, I thought that was more surprising to me than when we found out that her dad died.
Really?
Yeah.
All the things you guys were thinking were surprising, I thought were really clearly telegraphed. So I think this might be a function of I am more of a mystery reader. And
that is entirely possible.
I think the big twist at the end, which I don't really want to say because I would like people to read this book, like, of who done it, I think that worked really well in that way where like you're reading the book, something happens and you're like, oh shit, oh that guy done it, oh my god he did it, oh he totally did it, and she doesn't know yet. And it takes her a couple pages to be like, oh shit, he totally did it. And you'll spend those pages going like, oh my god. Like I started reading this book like in the morning when I was having my breakfast and I was getting through, 5-10% of it, 2 or 3 days in a row on, in the morning. And then I took the book to bed on Friday night to read some more. And I was at about, maybe 30% or something, and then I just finished it. So, clearly I was just like, oh well, I'm not like falling asleep tired yet. I'll just finish this because it's good fun.
See, this is what is so weird to me, because I didn't ever have to force myself to pick it up, but I also at no point was racing through it. But, like, I don't know why it is, but because instead of like, because I'm impatient as a reader. Like, I think part of the reason I don't necessarily like mysteries is, like, I just want to know who fucking did it. Like, all, like, the suspense part
the journey
works
is
for
not
me.
The point for you with
Like,
mystery.
no. Like, the suspense part works for me. Like, it builds the suspense, but to the point where I'm frustrated that I'm like, I don't even fucking care about all these other people and what they're doing and this painting, and I just want to know who is killing these people. Like, why are we all talking like other normal shit is happening when we should just be finding this murderer? Like, and it's so, and I don't know why, because I love procedurals. I love like mystery and thriller based television shows, but there's something about it whereas
and I don't.
I know, which is like, and it's just so, because like, as opposed to the tension making me want to read faster to find out, I'm actually just mad at the book for not just like getting the fuck on with it already. But then every story would be like 15 pages long. So maybe I just need mystery short stories.
There were several smaller mysteries like woven in, or that didn't help at all for
I
you?
think the fact that one of the smaller mysteries had to do with an electrified ping pong ball was just a little too much in the realm of like silly for me to really be like super
that was part of the big mystery, and I thought that was super clever, but that's fine, you didn't like that. I mean more like Stewart's thing with Di. I don't know how much we want to
I thought that was really cool. I thought their relationship was
great.
I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
I thought that the whole thing with Darrow and what he was doing and why Xanthe was looking for him, I thought that worked really well. I actually really liked Stewart, except for the part where he kept like super violating her privacy by publishing things about her in the news. And then she would be like, why did you do that? And he would be like, it's okay, I'm Scottish and I'm cute. Give me coffee.
When did he do that apart from the I thought it was just like the time that like
I mean, he published pictures of her and Bishop kissing. He lured her to that party for that. Like
there's literally a bit where he's like, that's not my picture. The one that I took of you is more flattering.
Well, yeah, but he's still taking her picture to then eventually put it on. I don't know. It just felt to me like several times he like violated, and even if like it wasn't necessarily a violation of privacy, it was a violation in a way that he knew she would not like. And he did it anyway, and then they just were like cute together.
I was annoyed with him whenever he like took interviews of people at her cafe and then published them, and it was like really obvious from the photo that he was in her cafe, because like he knows she's gonna get in trouble with those cops, and when she tells him Bishop's gonna kill me, like I'm gonna get in trouble with this guy who's a very, a friend of mine, and also maybe I love him. Like, when she says that to him, he's like, oh shit, I didn't think of that. And apologizes, and it's like, okay, fine. I mean, like...
I feel like, in fairness, she was going on the assumption he should know things.
Like, if someone gives you the keys to a place so you can paint it, it's not okay to bring strangers there.
Yeah.
Like, especially if that place happens to have a cash register, just saying.
And I don't know, I just felt like it was really sketchy of him to take her to that club knowing that something is going to happen and not telling her. I just like that, and I understand the point of it in the plot is that it's a sketchy thing for him to do, but I just felt like we moved on from that really fast, as opposed to that, like for me that would have been a bigger violation of like
I thought she was more concerned about Xanthe being involved in that bit than really him, I thought she was like, yeah, like, that was a dick move for him to do, but also, is my old BFF a murderer?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, like, also, she listens in on him talking to someone on the phone when she's in the bath, because she's like, I know that the acoustics in my bathroom are magical, and therefore... because plot, I can hear...
Yeah, but she doesn't have a blog that she's going to publish that shit on later, taking advantage of their relationship for his own personal, like, employee gain. Whatever. He's cute and he's Scottish. We'll just leave it on the level.
Here's my thing with the Stewart relationship versus... my brain just died.
Bishop?
What is the policeman guy's name? Bishop.
Oh,
I
Bishop.
thought so. And then I was like, no, that can't be right. So Stewart versus Bishop. I thought that, like, the way that she wrote them was, like, to clearly indicate different things about Tabby. Because she knows Stewart for, like, 10 seconds before she's letting him have a key to her place. And, like, literally she knows him for, like, a week by the end of the book.
Yeah, something
and to see,
like that.
like, how much more trust and, like, she's willing to place in him rather than someone who she's knows literally known. She can trust and rely on, who she's known for a decade. And I thought that she was setting that up as a really interesting contrast. But I can totally understand why that wouldn't work for you. And there's obviously, like, he does various sketchy things for plot reasons. Yeah. But I was okay with that.
Yeah. And I mean, like, again, I did not hate this book. So, like, none of these things were big enough quibbles for me to, like, not want to read it anymore. But there were just a couple points where, if it had been me, we would probably not have, like, kissed and made up and moved on quite as quickly as Tabitha and Stewart did a couple of different times. So.
The way that I was bought in with this is that, like, she meets Stewart. She immediately likes him because he's Scottish and his hot and his ass looks good, right?
Also, yes.
And she's like, oh, well, Bishop, I've known him forever, and if it wasn't for, like, my dad and the fact that he was all that, you know, we would definitely have boned, but, like, now it's never gonna happen. So she sets it up in that way, and then it becomes very quickly clear to me, anyway, when I was reading it, like, the fact that, like, she and Stewart have moved into, like, this is just gonna be, like, an easygoing friendship, and it's very clear to, like, Stewart that he's stepping into a situation where she and Bishop have known each other for a really long time. They have a lot of shit going on, and he's just not getting into that because, like, you know, that's not... The fact that there was even a whiff of a love triangle at the beginning of the book, I was like, oh god, no. You know?
But you know I wouldn't do that to you.
No, I know.
Yeah, right. And then, like, I thought the way that it was handled, that, you know, the transition between, well, you know, Bishop and I could have got together 10 years ago, but now it's never gonna happen, to, like, oh, I kind of want to have his babies, that was fairly smooth to me. And the same with the Stewart relationship, where she's like, I've just met him, he's hot, to, like, this is actually, like, a good, dependable friend, and we're gonna be friends. Like, she does snog him at some point later, but she's just escaped a murderer, so I think that's, like... you know, whatever, fine, that happens. And also, like, if she wants to snog random people, like, I'm not gonna slut shame her about it.
Feel
if she
free.
has to, you know. But I just thought that was generally really well handled, you know? Sometimes there are people that, like, you just know this is going to be a beautiful friendship. And, like, it is possible for that to happen when you, like, both fancy when you, like, both think the other person is attractive. And also when you both, like... are good friends. I don't know. It's just a thing that is possible.
There's nothing wrong with, like, both. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with having friends and being like, we would both be okay with kissing each other, but also we're okay with not doing it for the sake of this other better thing is our being friends together.
Because circumstances and contexts are things that exist.
I will say, and this is I think so, I'm so used to love triangles that when this wasn't that, it was weird to me to read it. Not bad weird, but just I'm so predisposed to see that two adult males and one adult female working out in that kind of conflicted way, that to see this book not do that and not do that very early on was, like, actually super rad, like, really unexpected and, like, kind of surprising, but, like, also really, really cool. Any stuff we super loved really, really hard?
I have two favorite things about this book.
Okay.
And the first one is the way that Hobart is basically a character and how, like, richly drawn this world is. It's just great. And it feels like such a real place, even though obviously I have never been to Tasmania. And my second thing is, this book has, like, maybe my favorite ensemble in a mystery ever. I love, like, everyone in it. Everyone feels like a real, like, fulsomely drawn character in this. And all of their interpersonal relationships felt real and complicated and like they had rich history, which you almost never get.
You almost never get,
yeah. Yeah, so much.
Yeah, I was less sold on the Zenta and Darrow subplot, where it was like, because I just didn't have as much of the context and the backstory, you know? I was less sold on that, but it was a combination of things I thought worked, like, super well, and I was 100% on board, and thing where I was like, yeah, okay, I can take it or leave it, it's fine. You know, when you're saying, Kay, that for you this is like a solid 3-star book, where it's like, I liked it, but meh, You know, like that's how I felt about the bits that I liked less about it.
Yeah.
I have to say, I really liked the reveal of the bad guy, which obviously I'm not gonna say, but like I really liked both the moment that I already mentioned where you first realize that it's him and you like put everything in place, and also like just the reasoning behind it and the kind of like explanation afterwards, and the like sometimes you get to the end and you're like, there has been so much contortion in order to make it possible that we didn't know immediately who it was, and like that wasn't a thing here at all. So that was great.
I think something that I really like need to come across in all the thrillers and mysteries I read is kind of like Claire was saying, that like oh shit feeling of like when all the puzzle pieces drop together and you realize your protagonist is in like maybe not the best situation, that like gut twist feeling, like that needs to be there. Like I've read several mysteries where they get to that moment and it falls flat for various reasons, and this one didn't. So I really appreciated that.
The banter with everyone in this book, like I thought the dialogue is so good. It's really
it's A+.
sharp.
It's A+. They do that great thing that happens a lot with cop shows where they have that taciturn cop who is just playing very straight man, but then has that like one line that is like hilarious, that just plays very like flat and very kind of straight man, and it just cracks me up.
Like, did you just make a joke right now?
Exactly.
Right now.
Oh man. All right. So yeah. So I guess that, unless anybody has other big things they want to talk about.
I found mine.
Okay. Did you find it? Okay.
Like
no, you're fine. No. I want to make sure we get everything.
Sorry. So there's a point that like fucking cracked me up because I did not expect it. But then when it happened, I was like, this makes total sense. Because it's the kind of thing that happens to you if you've lived somewhere a long time. And it's not even necessarily a small town thing, right? But when you've lived somewhere a long time, you run into people. And so at some point, the bad guy, who shall remain unnamed, you know, has our heroine with him. And they are like walking through a crowded area. And he clearly just like wants to have a clean getaway. But like, she knows everybody.
Literally
everyone.
And so like, they're just walking and he's like, be quiet, whatever. And someone's like, oh, hey Tabby, how you doing, Tabby? And she like runs across 15 people. And like, the line is, by the time we reached the floral clock, I'd also been greeted by 2 regular cafe customers, my favorite bank clerk, and a couple of Siege's gamer friends. And it's just like, it felt very true to, like, not a lot of this book, which is about growing up in a small town, like, felt very true to my own experience of, like, my life, because I've always lived in larger cities. But, like, that particular bit of neighborhood thing, like, I got my phone stolen in the street, like, 4 weeks ago, and literally 5 minutes later, I ran into someone I knew whose phone I could borrow. to like... So it was just, like, it felt so real, and I was like, yeah, that would totally happen. And it's another one of these things that you never see anywhere in fiction. But, yeah, that was delightful.
There's a really great line I bookmarked about that. Hold on, let's see. Where she talks about, like, the freaky Mount Wellington ley lines.
Yeah.
She's like, not real ley lines, just things connected to other things. Coincidence is a common thing around here. It's a small city. Everyone is everyone else's ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other of non-specific gender. We have about 1.5 degrees of separation, and we blame the mountain because it's there. I'm just like, that's, yes.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Also, I finished reading this book and immediately used my Kindle to buy the second one, which is not something I have done before.
Oh, yay. That's great. I did not do
like
that, but good for
too.
you. I just don't think cozy mysteries are my jam. I just don't think there's enough.
Well, I didn't think they were, but...
There's just not enough blood and guts up in there. Plus, I just, like, there were smooching, but it wasn't enough smooching to be, like, smooching. So I was just like, what is happening here? Oh, man. I guess I'm just too used to romance now that if there aren't at least, like, nipples in it, I'm like, why are we even bothering? with this scene.
No, did making you read romance ruin you for other genres that only have a little bit
Probably.
of romance?
No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. Whatever. Okay. Should we go ahead and talk about what our next book is going to be? Because I'm actually really excited. I think this one sounds really, really awesome. Tell us about it, Claire. Tell us about our next book.
So our next book is going to be The Graces by Laura Eve, and this is a book about witches, or at least everyone said the Graces were witches. This is a YA novel about a girl who moves to a new town, and this is a book about a girl who lives in a town where everybody is obsessed with this family, the Graces, and says that they are witches. They're glamorous and apparently magical, but is this what's really going on, or is it something a bit more dangerous than just, a good old coven of witches? So I picked this because I've heard of it a bunch. I've met the author at a couple of events, and it's just been on my radar, and I thought it would be great for our little, coven of the podcast to read about witches. And I'm really excited.
That sounds really awesome. It's giving me a lot of the Witches of Eastwick's vibe with the cover and stuff, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, the American cover is... I like the American cover a lot more than the UK cover, which doesn't happen.
Is that the red one or the pink one?
Yeah, the American one is red, and then the UK one is more blue with pink shells on it. It's fine, but I like the red better, obviously, because I'm me.
No, we're all surprised by that.
I know, shocked and amazed. All right, well, we will be back in a couple of weeks to talk about The Graces by Laura Eve. Until then, what can they find us doing? What do we have on the go? Do you have anything, Claire?
Well, I'm still cranking out videos on the YouTube channel. I'm always trying to do more and do blog posts and things like that, but I'm kind of terrible at it, so that tends not to happen. One thing that I'm quite excited to record in the next week or so is a video I was inspired to do after everybody was gushing about Buffy the Vampire Slayer when it was the 20th anniversary, and all the GIFs and images and quotes that were coming up on Twitter. I was just listening to the musical episode and having feels, so I found myself a Buffy the Vampire Slayer book tag that has 12 questions related to characters from the series, and I'm super excited to do that.
That'll be fun. That sounds like a fun tag topic. What about UK? Are we at a year yet? Are we at a year of Star Trek yet? Star Trek,
For
right?
those new to the podcast, I have a project on Twitter where I am posting a Star Trek fanfiction rec every day until the new show premieres, and I have been doing that since this past August. And they keep pushing the premiere date of the show, so it sounds like it's going to be premiering either late summer or early fall.
Okay.
And at this point, I am planning to end it at 365 days. I have enough fics lined up that I can do this.
Woohoo.
Superwoman.
So we're just gonna keep on keeping on with that. And I have not been doing much non-fiction writing at the moment, so I don't think I will have any New Book Riot pieces up, but I had a super productive fiction writing day the other day.
Yeah, you did.
Really
what is it, 10K?
10K?
10K words? Something like that?
I wrote 10K in an afternoon/evening, and it was really bizarre. I'm very rarely that randomly productive, so that was nice.
Well, I am just going to be keeping on doing the normal stuff. I have the booktube videos coming out. A big one, or a new one that's coming out, is I am actually getting ready to start the last book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, which is a series I have been reading for 7 years now. which is small
Who's ready for
potatoes.
Idris.
I was gonna say that's small potatoes of reading time for some people who have been reading this series, but that's the longest series that I've been reading in terms of longest period of time. So I'm very excited to wrap that up and do probably a couple videos about that in anticipation of the movie that's coming out this summer with one hey McConaughey and Idris Elba. So
Happy
I'm ecstatically interested to see how the Dark Tower is going to come across with those two particular
I have no
individuals.
idea how the fuck you filmed that, but I'm here for it.
I'm just gonna watch The Thing, and that'll be it, because the books are too big.
Well, no, but and here's what I always recommend the books skipping the first one, which is awful. I've had many conversations with Stephen King purists about this, but like, I don't necessarily think you need the first one. The first one's such a huge departure into this weird Western setting and plot. It's just, I don't know. It's very weird. So it's going to be one of those.
Am I remembering wrong? This is the series he wrote himself into?
Yeah, he writes himself in as a character in the last couple of books. This is... To me, and it sounds so poncy to say it this way, but to me, this is one of those like keystone books for King, because it is the series of books which make reference to almost all of the other books that he's written. And so it's like, if you,
but he's Stephen motherfucking King.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, like, if someone can do that shit, it's probably
on his pile of money.
There's too many books, right? There's too
There
many
are.
books in general in the world that I want to put in my eyeballs, and I don't read, like, super quickly. And don't get me wrong, this is not the first King I would recommend. I would recommend, if you like Stephen King, I definitely think it's one you have to read, but I don't think that it's one you have to read just in terms of like. What would you recommend for someone who's new to Stephen
Salem's
King?
Lot.
It's tough, because I would always recommend for Stephen King that people start with The Stand, but that's a really hard recommendation to me because that book is 1,000 pages long.
No, I mean, I'm not reading that.
Are my two favorites, and they're both super long. Salem's Lot is very. I think it gives
like
you kind
Salem's
of
Lot.
representative idea of his more horror stuff.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, because I read his slightly fantasy-y one, like The Eyes of the Dragon, and it was good, but like I think that's pretty unrepresentative.
I would actually probably, of all
everything.
the stuff, I would start with like probably Salem's Lot. Yeah, Salem's Lot or Pet Sematary. Just because they're not the shortest, but they're a good sampling of his style and the kind of horror that he writes. My thing is like
His
many
short
of
fiction collections are good too.
Yeah, I do like his short. I actually like some of the earliest stuff he wrote under Peter. Like, I think The Long Walk is really great. I think Apt Pupil is really worth checking out, and those are
Shawshank
like
Redemption,
much shorter.
Green Mile.
Yeah, The Green Mile is great because you can read it episodically, like it was originally published in like chap books that were short. So, but my favorites are the long ones. I love It. I love The Stand. I love the big ones,
which those are both good on audio.
Yes, they are very good, and
so you could have them be your traveling around book.
Yeah, working from home is cutting down on my audiobook time a lot, and I'm not complaining, because I never will complain about that. It's great, but like, I have to rearrange my audiobook listening time if I want to maintain.
I had that problem too.
Yeah, I always have to choose between audiobooks and podcasts. It's always a juggling game of what's going on. So, too much stuff, never enough time. And on that note, I guess we should probably go ahead and say goodbye to everybody. We will see you guys again in a couple of weeks to talk about the Graces. Until next time, bye.
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 You've been listening to Sisterhood of the Traveling Paperbacks, a podcast made by 3 online besties and all-around lady nerds. Channel art provided by Claire Russo. Music credits to Malt Shop Bot by Kevin MacLeod. You can get in touch with the Sisterhood at paperbackssisterhoodpodcast@gmail.com, at paperbackspod on Twitter, or at our website paperbacksisters.wordpress.com. You can reach Kay at @KTaylorRay on Twitter, Claire at @Claire Russo, and Chelsea at @AnOutlawLife. Additional credits, show notes, and transcripts will be available on our website. Thank you so much for listening.
No paperbacks were harmed in the making of this program.
Guys, what is even the world? Like, what is even happening?